Hi, I'm Alex, and I'm a big fan of a lot of things that might be considered a little niche: JRPGs, independent games, films, and foreign film. And being inside for the last year, I have had the opportunity to play a lot of games and watch a lot of movies. So I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about a lot of things that I've been enjoying, but also to hopefully introduce people to new things that otherwise they maybe would have not heard of. So I hope you enjoy the video, and let's just jump right into it. So the first game I'd like to talk about is Beyond Blue. Beyond Blue is a narrative-driven scuba diving simulator where you're dumped into large open areas of ocean and can swim around freely, interacting with sea life. There is an overarching narrative about a pod of whales and the people researching them, but also about our impact on the environment. As you play, you'll unlock documentary footage, but also 3D models that you can view of the sea life you've been interacting with. It's just an overall very relaxing game. It's only about 4 or 5 hours to beat, so if you have some time to kill, it's a really pleasant experience. The next game I want to talk about is Utawarerumono Prelude to the Fallen, which is a remake of the original Utawarerumono game that came out a good 18 years ago or so in Japan, but we just got the full trilogy out here in the West, and it is easily one of my favorite visual novels I've ever played. For those of you who don't know, a visual novel is essentially an interactive novel. So it is a novel being told through the video game medium, but with images, usually a full score, and voice acting to accompany everything, to make it a fully immersive experience. Utawarerumono is not just a visual novel though, it's also a turn-based strategy game. The turn-based combat is pretty bare bones, but it's serviceable and it's fun if you're a fan of the genre. That's not really the selling point of the game though. The selling point is definitely going to be the visual novel portion of the game, so the narrative and the world building. Utawarerumono blends anime with high fantasy in a way that's wholly unique, and it's really hard for me to do this series justice just by describing it. It's something people need to experience. So if you're a fan of anime or fantasy in any capacity, I think this is something worth checking out. And if visual novels are something you've never tried out before, this is also a great starter visual novel. I recommend this really highly, and God, I just love it so much. It's so good. And the music is amazing and the characters are amazing. It is just an amazing series, and I hope you give it a chance and try it out. And if for any reason you don't want to do the visual novel, which I understand, it's kind of long, there is an anime adaptation of the original one on Funimation that is worth a watch. It's a pretty good adaptation. It just cuts out some things. But I hope you check out the series in some capacity, and I hope you like it. Now, I'd like to talk about a couple films I've watched while in quarantine, because we're all still stuck inside and everything sucks, but at least we have film. But I only want to talk about films by a certain director, Takashi Miike, which if you're a fan of foreign cinema, you've probably already heard of him, but if you're not, he is one of the more prolific Japanese directors. He has over 100 directorial credits to his name, of varying quality, but the films that are great, and I want to take a moment to highlight a couple I've watched over the last year that I really love. So the first film I want to talk about is First Love. It is actually Takashi Miike's newest film. It came out last year, and it is a crime thriller about a boxer who falls in with a prostitute who's on the run from the Yakuza. And it is a very violent film, but it's also darkly comedic, in the same vein as maybe a Tarantino film. So I definitely recommend it if you are a fan of Tarantino's work, but also if you're looking for a good crime thriller to watch. The next film is going to be Ichi the Killer. Ichi the Killer is actually one of Miike's more controversial films. It's actually been banned in a number of countries for its depiction of violence and sex. It's about a Yakuza enforcer who's looking for his boss who's gone missing, but there's also a serial killer terrorizing the town. It is a very graphic and violent and unhinged film. And I think unhinged is the key word to describe Ichi the Killer, because it is going to show you whatever it wants, regardless of how visceral or graphic it is, and expect you to stick around for the ride because it wants you to have fun. And the way the film is stylized and executed, it is fun. It is a very fun film that consistently kind of defied my expectations with its depictions of violence, because it's very surprising. And I frankly love this movie. I think it's fantastic. And I think if you are a fan of genre films, or if you're okay with gore, and you want to watch something wacky and zany and just completely off the wall, I don't think there's another film like Ichi the Killer, and I think it's fantastic. And if this sounds not up your alley, I can promise you it definitely isn't, and you should probably stay away from it. So the last film I want to talk in detail about is The Bird People in China, which I actually had a very hard time finding a way to watch this film. It's not available on any streaming services, it's a bit older. I ended up having to buy a used copy of it and watching it that way. But going into it, I kind of just expected this to be Miike's spin on a conventional drama or maybe like a lighthearted comedy, but this ended up being a very artistic representation of human emotion, but also an exploration of the surreal nature of what it is to dream. And I didn't expect that. And both in the way it's shot and the way that the story is told, this is a beautiful film, and it's fantastic. I think if you are a fan of art house cinema, you should absolutely see this film, because it is one of the best art house films I've watched in a very long time, and it's absolutely worth buying. Those are the 3 films I really wanted to cover in depth by Miike, because I think they showcase his flexibility as a director and his ability to create film in different genre. I could probably spend all day talking about all the films I love by him, because there's so many, but I just want to really quickly run through a couple more that I can summarize in just a sentence or two what makes them great. So his samurai epics, 13 Assassins, Harakiri, Death of a Samurai, and Blade of the Immortal are all amazing. 13 Assassins is easily one of the greatest samurai films ever. Harakiri, Death of the Samurai is a much smaller film than 13 Assassins, but is still a fantastic period piece. And Blade of the Immortal is an adaptation of the manga of the same name, and where it definitely isn't a historical epic because it's much more fantastical in nature, the action set pieces are fantastic, and it's just a bunch of fun from beginning to end. Audition is probably Miike's most well-known film outside of 13 Assassins. The cult following that this movie has is so massive, there's a good chance that just horror buffs in general are already aware of it. You don't have to be a foreign film fan. But then he also has weirder films that I just love. Yakuza Apocalypse is one of my personal favorites. The whole premise behind it is that Yakuza and vampires are the same thing. So the main character, being a Yakuza vampire, is going around biting people and turning them into Yakuza vampires. So if he bites a schoolgirl, suddenly that girl is a vampire, but she's also now a Yakuza, so she has a tattoo on her back and a bad attitude, and they're just spreading it across the town, and it's a Yakuza apocalypse. And it is so much fun, and it's hilarious, and I've seen it multiple times, and it's still just as stupid and fun every single time. I love it. And also, The Happiness of the Katakuras, which is Miike's take on a musical. It's kind of like The Sound of Music, but if instead of, being The Sound of Music, it was about a family that run an inn in the middle of the country, trying to hide the bodies of the people that check in and die. So that one is pretty fun. I don't like it as much as Yakuza Apocalypse, but if you're a musical fan and you want to give that one a whirl, it is a very Miike musical. And then he also has some of the greatest Yakuza films ever made. He makes so many Yakuza films. Senjuku Triad Society is a very good one. Rainy Dogs. And Gozu, which Gozu is like a bad acid trip of a movie. Very weird, very uncomfortable. It's a very unconventional Yakuza film. So I definitely only recommend that one to people looking for a crime thriller that's also a horror film, but it's definitely good. He's also the director of multiple live-action video game and manga adaptations, including Yakuza Like a Dragon, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamonds Are Unbreakable, which is only the fourth part of JoJo. I don't know why they didn't do anything for the first three parts, but it was okay. And Lessons of the Evil, just to name a few. But this is just a handful of Miike films, some that I really, really love. Some of them, even if I don't love them, I still had a lot of fun with them, and I could even watch them again. So I'm sure there's a film here for everybody. And even if there isn't one that I listed, I'm sure if you look through all his films, there is a film there that you will probably enjoy. And the last thing I want to talk about today is an anime that I love with all my heart. I've rewatched it multiple times, and I rewatched it earlier last year, and that is March Comes In Like a Lion. It is one of the most emotionally rewarding shows I've ever watched, animated or live action. It's just a fantastic television show. It follows a 17-year-old boy named Rei Kiriyama. He's a pro shogi player, but he's also dealing with his own personal issues like depression and social anxiety, on top of being a professional shogi player. And the whole story is about him kind of dealing with his problems, whether they be related to shogi, his family, or his own personal issues that he's dealing with. And this show's depiction and handling of very sensitive subject matter like depression, bullying, and loss is so tender and well realized that it feels very genuine and heartfelt. And when things happen to these characters, not just Kiriyama, it feels emotionally devastating because of how well written it is. But at the same time, seeing these characters overcome these issues and learn to trust and love one another and deal with their problems, it is some of the happiest moments I've had watching a TV show. There is a fair bit of humor sprinkled throughout the show, just to kind of keep things lighthearted in places, but it's just such a wonderful show, and I want more people to see it. One of the only other anime that I think handles subject matter like this in such a delicate way is A Silent Voice, which is a fantastic film if you haven't seen it. But this is such an amazing show, and I really want more people to see it, which is why I'm talking about it now. So you can watch it on Netflix, Crunchyroll, I think you can see it on Funimation. There is a dub, but I do recommend watching it subbed. I think the original Japanese voice cast is phenomenal, and I do think that you get more out of it by watching it subbed. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I hope you watch the show, and I hope you love it as much as I do. And that's all I really have to talk about. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you were able to discover something new to maybe check out during quarantine. I'm a little nervous because this is my first time making a video like this, so it might be a little rough around the edges, but I still hope you had fun with it. And I'm going to plan on making more of these because I really have seen so many movies and played so many games that I feel like are worth talking about. And I hope you look forward to that. Thank you.